kind of give you a recap kind of from the start of the job and just discuss kind of what the plan was and any changes that we've made and kind of where we're going.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll just jump in quick just to kind of set things up a little bit. So this pre-design report, council has seen kind of a draft of it in the past. And we basically were waiting to finalize it until we had some of the idea with funding and kind of some of the new information we've had. So I think what we were anticipating today, Chris, is that, again, just a bit of a recap kind of where we came from to where we are, what's changed in the report or any additions, and kind of where we see moving forward.
Okay, that sounds good. I guess first off, when we started out this project here, we had a few issues with our sewage treatment. The biggest one was our quality. The first one with quality is just the treated affluent wasn't meeting the requirements of the LC50 testing. We had ammonia issues. And then the second quality issue was odor. I know that there's odor issues every spring in Warman, like every other community around here. So the issue with the quality is over the winter, the lagoon freezes over. We don't have the sun or the wind action to do the treatment that we need. This ice also traps that gas in there for the 4 months. And then when the ice leaves the lagoon, of course, the odor, all of a sudden you had 4 months of odor coming out. So that's kind of the issue with the quality. And there is a number of things that we're adding into the project to deal with these two issues. The next issue was quantity. We know that City of Warman's going to continue to grow. So we need to accommodate the growth here. So, and with quantity, the awkward part of it is there's a conflict between how you look at it. You can look at storage volume, just the amount of affluent you can hold, or you can look at how much can we treat and discharge. So you can look at flow rate. And that's really the difference between a biannual discharge and a continuous discharge. With biannual discharge, that's what we're doing right now. We're discharging twice a year. So we need to hold enough volume for 180 days, so half the year. And to do that, you need a lot of space. There's a few things that we can do to increase our volume out there by like raising berms, but there's a limit to what we can do to increase our storage at the facility that we are. To go any more, we're going to have to increase the size. We'll have to purchase land and expand the lagoon. There's a lot of hurdles to deal with when we go into that option. The other option is, at what point do we have to look at continuous discharge? So we don't have to focus so much on just having physical volume. We can look at, okay, how quick can we treat this and release it? So we need our treatment to happen as quick as it's coming in, so we have a balance. So we have to accommodate kind of the average day flows into the lagoon. So that was really the start of the project. And that took us into that feasibility report that we did a couple of years ago. And with that, our approach was that we know that the City of Warman can only do so much at a time. So we tried to break it down into smaller stages. So we were kind of between 2.5 to 7 million per stage. We do a new stage probably every 3 to 5 years, eventually getting to where we wanted to. And with that, I guess the biggest hurdle was, when are we going to make that switch from biannual discharge to continuous discharge? And we took, I guess when we went to do the funding, we decided to break it up as to, okay, what can we do with the storage out there? Biannual discharge, we can get up to 18 to 19,000 population if we spend the funds that we had there, and that's what we applied for in the funding. And that, so I think we applied for 18 million, and the plan was to get to 19,000 population. After that, we'd have to bring in Sager cells or something similar to it so we could go to continuous discharge. And that would be a big jump. Now, when we did the costing here, we were looking at doing these stages kind of every 3 to 5 years. So you're estimating costs on items that you won't be doing for 10 or 15 years down the road. So then you have some pretty healthy contingency that you build into the project to accommodate just the unknown of how prices are going to change over the years. So when we went for the funding, we included the contingency that we had in there. So we have some pretty healthy contingency in the project at this moment. Now that we're going to be doing the work here in the next 12 months, we feel a lot more comfortable with our prices, and we don't feel like we need as much contingency. So then you start thinking, well, what happens with that money? If we go out there, build what we said we were going to build, it costs us 15 million. There's 3 million that we're kind of leaving on the table there. Usually that's a good thing. That can go back into the city's bank account. You can do it some other project. But in this case, most of that 3 million would go back to the funding agency, and it's money that the city can't use, is kind of my understanding. And I don't think they look favorably on us coming in under budget and then saying afterwards, oh, we'd like to add some other things because we have budget. So we really wanted to take a second look at kind of everything that was recommended in the feasibility study, knowing that we're doing a much bigger project than a bunch of small little projects. And we really wanted to see what can we do if we kind of plan on spending that contingency right now, and see how far that could get us. So when we looked at the options, we still had that big hurdle of when do you make that jump from biannual discharge to continuous discharge. And it became pretty apparent that in the long run, economically, it makes sense to do it right now. And kind of include some, well, I guess we're including Sager cells at the end of our treatment. And what they do is kind of, they're a polishing system. Like right at the very end of the treatment, it kind of polishes up the affluent just before we release it. So when we did the pre-design report, that was kind of our approach, is let's spend that contingency and get the most out of what we can out of that 18 million that we had in the budget. And when we did that, just to let you know, we're looking at being able to accommodate a population of 26,000 people now. And I guess before we were looking at 19, so now we're up to 26. So I think that would be a pretty awesome goal if we can reach that. We've just kind of eaten up our contingency, so we're very tight on budget. But we're also hoping that with this being a much bigger project, you got the economies of scale there, that hopefully bigger project, prices come in better. So that's kind of where we are right now, kind of wrapping up the pre-design report. So I guess, is there any questions about the pre-design?
Okay, I can't see there we go. Is anyone, oh, Richard.
Excellent, thank you. Certainly seeing the comprehensive report and everything all put together there, I certainly appreciated all of the details and everything there provided. So I certainly thank you for that. And I think that was a really good overview that you had given us. I just wanted to just on a couple of things that have been lingering on my mind, just in terms of issues that have come up in the past. Just wondering if we've gotten any resolution on those. The first one there being, let's say the installation of the pipeline along the railway to go with the continuous discharge. Is there any issues with that? Because I believe that there was some concerns about how CN was going to feel about that. So I'm just wondering if that hurdle has been cleared.
I believe so. I've talked to Bob and Brad about this. We went to CN and talked to them about it, and they said, we have no issue with it at all as long as you guys stay out of our property. We know it'll be a real battle to be within their property. And the other issue there is that there isn't enough room in their property. So regardless, we would have to take out an easement on the adjacent properties to the south of the rail right away. So in our discussions, we thought, well, you know what, if we're going to have to take, say, a 4-meter easement to put this pipeline in and have part of it in the CN right away, or do you just take an 8-meter easement and not deal with CN? And we felt that was kind of the easier solution here, because CN is next to impossible to work with. So that is the plan right now, is just take out that little bit larger easement in the private properties.
Sorry, Councillor Beck, if I could just add to that, just so you're aware, we have started discussions too with the property owners between the city and the river. And most, well, I should say not most, all are in favor of the project and some of the benefits that they'll even see from it. So in preliminary discussions, it's looking like it's going to be a fairly easy process to work with them to get easements in place. And once those easements are in place, they still will be able to do conventional farming and those kinds of things over top of them.
Perfect. Right on. So just a few other questions I had regarding the report here. So Nexum, so are they now contracted to be doing the aeration supply?
No, we haven't put together the contract yet. The aeration part of it, we're going to base it on performance. So that means that the contractors who bid it will have some flexibility to go to other systems. Because we want to tender this, we don't want to kind of sole source anyone on it. And Nexum won't actually be the general contractor. They supply and install their items, but they don't do anything else. And they need help from a general contractor. So it'll be a general contractor that will bid the job. And if they choose to use Nexum and their aeration system, then that's up to them.
Okay. And with that, there you actually provide some oversight over that general contractor, though, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it'll put together a performance spec. The only thing with Nexum is, now that we're thinking about going to these Sager cells, that is their technology. So it'll be hard for other companies to match what's in the spec. They'll be able to match the aeration side of things, but the Sager cells, they'll have trouble matching. But having said that, I noticed in the on SAS tenders a few weeks ago that the town of Battleford is tendering a project, and they're tendering Sager cells. So there is no real competition there. That's just how they tendered it.
Okay. Right on. Because like one of the things that I noticed from their project overview, I believe it's page 2, is they noticed, or this year, like they note that that there'd be the partial mix aeration in cells 1, 2, and 3, and throughout the report previous to that, it's 1, 2, and 4. Could you confirm with me that it is 1, 2, and 4?
It is 1, 2, and 4 as the cells sit today. In part of this project is we may start referring to the cells under a different numbering system because we're changing the flows. Right now, cell 1 and cell 2 operate in parallel to cell 3, and they all flow to cell 4, where we're going to switch things up so that everything goes from cell 1 to cell 2 to the existing cell 4, back to the existing cell 3, and then to 5, just for better circulation.
Okay.
So that might be kind of the confusion in the terminology, is that we might be changing the numbering system.
Okay, yeah, and that certainly works for me. It's just that I noticed that, like the one cell was bigger than, or I guess cell 3 is bigger than cell 4. So I was just going like, well,
Yep.
if it is cell 3, has that been adjusted for in the price or things like that? So that there's good. And then
Yep.
just a question on the Sager systems. So with this here, from the drawing there that I looked at, it looks like, so is that 4 independent Sager systems, basically like in parallel, or let's say sitting side by side, so that way
Yep.
they're like so all of that works there, let's say together. But are there 4 separate cells?
Yep. There's 4
Yeah.
separate cells that operate in parallel there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that give us flexibility on maintenance on those, in terms of like if they do let's say require maintenance or cleaning and that kind of thing, whatever, that we can shut one of those down, clean that up, and it doesn't really affect our continuous discharge?
Absolutely. Yep. That's what that means, is that you can shut one down.
Okay. And then one thing that I never did see in the report is any life cycle replacement for those Sager cells. For those Sager cells. What's their life cycle? 5 years, 10 years, 20, 40?
Well, at this point, they're saying 20 years. And what you do after that 20 years is, like, it's a big cell of really crushed rock. So after that 20 years, you have to pull that rock out and either replace it, or else you wash the rock and put it back in. But yeah, from what they're telling us, it is very low maintenance, and they have had systems in North America upward of that 20 years already. So.
Perfect. Excellent. Right on. That's all my questions. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you, Your Worship, but hello, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Now, you probably answered this question for me a number of time before, but in the report, number 3.3, organic loading, it says the raw water tested showed lower than usual accepted concentrations of BODs. However, a more conservative concentration of such and such was assumed for the daily BODs. And then I guess, and then going on, it says this conservative value will allow for the upgraded lagoon to treat shock loads at a higher BODs. So my question is, why don't we have the right, what is happening that we're getting lower BODs, and why do we need to shock them? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess the big thing is just the loading. There is I guess Ministry of Environment's kind of their standard loading that we should be basing things on if we don't have good information. We did some testing. The testing that we did showed that your BOD loading is actually lower than what Ministry of Environment kind of recommends designing for. But it wasn't, we didn't do a lot of testing, and we didn't do it at different times of year. And it can change to year. So when we did this, we thought, well, let's go with the conservative number. And that kind of allows us that if things aren't if the numbers are higher than what we tested, we're on the safe side. If the numbers are actually what we tested, that means that we have more capacity in the lagoon to treat kind of even further than what we were planning to. So.
Okay. My next question is in regards to the aluminum dosing and mixing system for this phosphorus removal. Our levels there, our phosphorus concentration is pretty, they are very high compared to what they're asking for the limit to be. Is this a concern with this, how we're going to deal with that with this new system, or will that cause extra costs?
So we've included phosphorus removal into the project now, but it's not required at this time. Environment has never kept an eye on phosphorus levels. this is kind of a general practice in other regions, is kind of the rates that are shown there. And we think that someday environment might push those rates, but they haven't said anything yet. What they've told us is that they've just started looking at phosphorus in the Qu'Appelle Valley because it's very high there. They're not looking at it anywhere else in the province. So we're kind of guessing that at a minimum, maybe we'll see in 5 years, but we might not see it for 20 years in the Saskatchewan River system. So it's not something that environment's looking at. We did look at it because we are concerned about it, and it may be a concern in the future. So we thought, well, let's see if we can fit it into the project, and if we can, that would be awesome. That kind of gets us ahead of the game here.
For sure. I agree. You want anything that's, above what the limit is. I think it would only benefits us in the long run. The ultraviolet disinfection system, does that have anything to do with the phosphorus, or is that something totally different? And why is that optional?
It's it's just disinfection before you put the effluent into the river. We left it as optional because we kind of like to have a few things in the report that we might consider adding on later if prices come in really good. If we don't have anything there, then I think that the funding agency is going to be on us if we try to add things outside of what we had planned. But in this case, we really aren't too concerned about the disinfection because anywhere these Sager cells have been put into service, they've taken care of the disinfection very well. So it's really kind of our way of hiding some contingency in the project right now.
Cool. That's great. And the last thing is I noticed in the diagram, now you're saying that it goes from cell 1, 2, 4, 3, 5, and in the figure 4.7, it says it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then to the Sager cells. Is that, which is,
that figure 4.7 is renumbered.
Okay.
Currently cell 3 and cell 4 are actually, they're named the other way around. But we kind of would like to name it as the flows go. So in the future, this is how we want the circulation to happen. So it makes sense to rename the cells to match this.
Okay. And then there is a thing at the end of the Sager cells. Is there a discharge of solids that comes out of the Sager cells, or is it just one flow all the way to the continuous flow to the pipe down to the river?
The solids will be treated by that point, so it'll just be the fluid affluent that flows out to the river.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for getting too technical.
No, that's no problem.
Gary?
Yes, I'm more of a timeline and budget guy. The technical stuff is beyond with most of this. So I just like when I flush, it's taken care of, and big project here. So thanks for the report, though. It's interesting reading. Timeline, budget. You already answered the questions I had, and I appreciate having those contingencies built within that. I know from the building project at the high school with similar ideas that we had stuff in there that you hope for, and if the opportunity is there, you do it. The timeline, 2022 still the end point, and can we get everything that you have now for 2020? Is it going to be on track? Any concerns with our new COVID world?
No, at this point, no concerns with the timing. We put in kind of 3 summers in there. At this point, we're still looking at, we are hoping to do it in 2 summers. So, but depending on if we add some optional items in there. So there's no concern with timing. I was hoping to do a little bit more this year, this summer before the freeze up, but the big issue there is with the aeration system and the blower pumps that are involved. it takes the suppliers about 4 months to get those on order and organized. So if we really push things this year and try to get that in, we'd be looking at a November, December install, which when you have contractors rushing against the weather, they usually don't do as good a job. Plus they're going to charge us more because of the unknown weather factor. So with the aeration, we're planning on bumping that back to next year. We'll look at tendering it this fall so that they have all winter to plan for it, prepare for it, so get the supplies in place, and then they'll have all summer. So there'll be no issue with timing. So we think we'll get a better product that way and better pricing that way. So the majority of the work's going to happen in 2021. For this year, our plan is sludge removal. We just did a sludge survey last week, so we're just waiting for the results of that so we can kind of plan the details of the sludge removal. So we want to do that this year. And there's some piping modifications that we have to do mainly in cell number 1. So we want to do those this year. I guess cell 1 is kind of our biggest risk factor here, is that cell 1 was built 50 years ago and it is fairly wet around it. So we're concerned about there being some leaks in the liner. So if we're going in there to do piping modifications, we're also going to take a look at that liner and do any repairs that we need to right away here. So we want to do that work this year because that's our big unknown. So we want that out of the way before we do our majority of the work so we can kind of better plan for the future and know where our budget is. So this year, sludge removal, piping modifications, and then we also want to tender out that pipeline this year because there is some sections that have to be directional bored, and quite often the contractors like to do those sections in the winter time. So that's why we'd like to get it out by the fall so that they have that option to do it over the winter.
Great, thank you. And again, thanks again about the capacity increasing was a big one for me too. So thanks for that. That helps with the timeline as far as I'm concerned. 2021 being the big year, but a few things to look forward to this summer.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay, not hearing any. So I guess thank you so much, Chris, for the overview. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss or bring up? Or?
No, I think we covered it. I had a few notes here, but the questions kind of took care of my extra notes. So those were some good questions there.
Okay, good. Thank you. Brad, is there anything that you wanted to bring up or follow up on?
No, I think Chris did a good job of summarizing kind of where we are right now.
Okay, well, I guess we're done then. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Well, thanks for having me.
Brian, was that just a wave goodbye or was that a question? Wave. Okay, so I guess that brings us to the end of our meeting. Is there anything else from any council members? I think we talked about meeting on, or having a meeting talking about budget on Thursday afternoon, somewhere around 2:30. We'll wait for invitation from Dawn. Anything else? Kendall?
Yeah, I don't know if Chris is still on the line there, but with Brad, I guess as far as how this project has gone, and we're including the Sager cells, and I guess I'm kind of wanting to hear from administration that this is exciting. This is what they want, or is there concerns that we're using all the contingency money? Just where are they all sitting with this?
So I think, I think generally speaking, I mean, with any big project like this, especially on the operations side, definitely Jason's kind of been involved and has, brought up some, I wouldn't call them concerns, but definitely questions that he's looking for some clarification on just around some of the operations side. And Chris and him have kind of been working on some of that, as well as Chris has met him on site to kind of look at some of the issues that they're experiencing or have experienced in the past. There's going to be little things here and there that will probably be coming up as we move along. For example, The other day, Bob brought up some things about just where sewage trucks dump and some testing stations along the lagoon and those kinds of smaller type things that will probably be dealt with kind of as we move along. Not to say that we're 100% exactly where we are, but like I said, Jason's kind of raised a few questions to Chris, and I think him and Chris have been working through those questions. And Chris knows what our kind of end goal is in terms of what we're looking at for the lagoon operation wise, and to pass some of those tests and the odor issues. And so I think, generally speaking, we're happy with where we're at right now, confident in the numbers. That being said, there's going to be different components that are tendered out at different times. So if we see certain components coming back higher or lower than what we kind of expected, that'll help kind of play into the next set of tendering as well, just to make sure that we're sticking close to that budget and not going over or not using too much of the contingency kind of up front. But I think generally speaking, okay, besides kind of, the questions that have been brought up through the process with operations, Bob and myself, but Bob or Jason may have something to add to that as well.
I don't know if I have anything further to add other than, from a big picture, no concerns. They'll move from here if, as we accept this process to include the Sager system with some of the numbers that they were getting back, that they'll start now moving to the detailed design, and those are the things that we'll continue to raise items with. And Jason has made some suggestions. I've made some suggestions of things not to forget, but it's more in the detail than it is in this. What was presented today was basically a preliminary project, and they'll start working on the detail stuff as we move along. Certainly he's done what we as administration have asked, is to have a long-term look at the plan, so we're not just putting something forward that is to build for today or for this this grant funding, that if we can take advantage of some other things along the road, make sure we're planning for those, which he's included in there. So I think we're off to a good start, and we'll see how it goes with as we get into the detailed design as well. But I think as far as the project, I think we got more than what we thought we would in the initial plan that he presented to us when we made the decision. Actually made the decision to go this way, and not necessarily a Sager system, but now we're adding the Sager system just because we see some he feels we can in the economies that he is seeing right now, and taking the contingency that he put in there, kind of putting that towards the Sager system, as it mentioned, as a polishing addition to our treatment.
Did you have a follow-up, Kendall?
Yeah, the operation and maintenance part of the NextCom thing at the end, it says it was $401,124. Is that over and above the operation that we already have for the lagoon? And is administration okay with that number for an operation?
So, are we comfortable? No, if it was zero, it would be best. But that's kind of what happens when you go with an aeration. It's very expensive to run an aeration system and a Sager. They both have blowers, so that's what your cost is going to be. That's going to ramp you up to that 400 or 300. 25,000. I think 175 is the life cycle costing on that. But it's a big figure. It's probably 40% of what our sewage costs would be now, like a 40% increase basically to our costs, which would be about a 20% increase in the water. Like an average water bill will probably end up, or potentially could end up going $10 a month as a result of that type of operating cost. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Yeah, I was just wanting to make the awareness of what that cost was, and just concerned. I just trying to get my head around, is this extra than what we already have, and how we'd reach that to look after it?
Yeah, it's extra, and those are just kind of ballpark discussions with Amanda going through kind of previous years, kind of what our operation looking, and adding this in. But either way, we were looking at, like, to go to an aeration system is when you looked at that breakdown of the $401,000, you're looking at just like $124,000 and I think $71,000. That's probably going to be mostly power costs. It takes, it's a blower. You're pushing air through a significant amount of water or through a significant amount of earth or rock, as he had mentioned, to filter. So, but it's not what we're used to, because that's one thing about facultative lagoon system is it's really easy or cheap to operate and easy to operate. Now we're going to have some costs because it's done naturally before, but we weren't keeping up in the regulations. We weren't adhering to the regulations. Now we have to go this route, so it is going to be an extra cost.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm sure everyone's raring to get outside and enjoy some of the sun. It's going to rain for the next 2 days, so enjoy your evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the call today.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.